Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So let's begin today with our Sacral chakra in the emotional week of Taurus. The topic for today is sculptor. So as you see, we are in this path, we are trying to learn many different things. So we have to open ourselves to see many things. So in the spiritual path, it's not only about talking about other dimensions, it's trying to understand a little bit of everything. So we have our mind very wide open to understand the many possibilities of the creation. So something that I wanted to say before we start today is regarding something that I wrote, that I saw, and that I would like to repeat every once in a while. So for us to be sure about what we are doing. This is a very long path. This is a very heavy path because it's been every day for a year. And of course that we have been every day connecting and every day doing things and learning stuff. Sometimes when you do this kind of things, it maybe takes 1 week or 1 weekend of worship, but this has been a constant path. So every day we have been learning about tiny things, like today sculpture, another day maybe about something about biology, another day about a dimension. So we have been touching all the different topics so we can have a wider conception of what is the reality. And we are doing this because we are here to change the world, to change the planet, but not because we are willing to, but because the planet is changing. So the planet is changing itself, so that's why we are here to make our part, which is to change. And when we do that, usually we want that change immediately. We want that to happen right now. And that takes us to a kind of a mistake that we do as the animals we are, which we are mammals. And as mammals, we tend to put the responsibility in someone else, expecting for that someone to make something for that change to happen. And that's normal because, of course, we are mammals and we have been evolved by that, through that way. So, of course, that because we are mammals, we are here doing the same thing. I'm here explaining stuff in front of you all the time. You are listening. So it's kind of a mammal way of doing things. But it's important for everyone to remember, to know that the goal of this path is not to wait for me to do something for the others. This path is to know a little bit of everything so we ourselves can discover our own potential and what can we do for the world as an individual. So it's about learning, taking a bit of data, and then to go farther and deeper into these concepts by ourselves. So this is not about waiting for someone to do something. This is a path to take you to do what you are supposed to do without expecting or waiting for anybody to do it before. And I'm saying this because today I read something that was kind of pushing to say, hey, like I'm doing all this every day, and sometimes we speak about topics that maybe are not related to what we are living or something like this, and someone can maybe think that I am just not doing anything, or we are not doing anything for the change, really. And actually, what I want to say is that this goal is to first know ourselves. Otherwise, any change that we want to do, it would be exactly the same and will repeat the same patterns. This is why before the task that we are going to do to help in whatever we can in the future, first we have to know ourselves, to understand the world, to know the universe, and to awaken that I am within. So as the topic for today, which is sculptor, and sculptor is one of the keys to understand the origin of humanity. It seems like weird to say that, but actually it is. All our ancient stories says that we were made out of clay as a figure, as a sculpture from the gods. So this unifies the idea of who has created us. It was nature, was aliens, was someone that worked with mud. Who was the creator of humanity? So this takes us to some conspiracy theories and things. So sculpture can give us a lot of things to talk about. So let's talk a little bit of this, about this. First, let's remember what sculptor means. So sculpture comes from the Indo-European language skel. Skel means to cut, to cut something. And the word ure, sculpture, this part here means that something is done, is the product of something. So is the result of cutting something. So basically sculpture is about to cut things, because the description of this is that you are taking the clay, you are taking the bricks, you are taking the stones, and then you start to cut the pieces until you get the shape. It can be any material that you have to cut to start to shape it. So that would be the idea of the origin of sculpture. So in order to understand the origin of sculpture, we have to go again to the origin of everything in our humanity. So in the month of Sagittarius, I explained a bit of why we are called humans. Humans comes from the Latin humus, that means wet land. So this is because we thought we were sons and daughters of water and earth. And the tradition that we are the mud people is because in a certain point, thousands of years ago, before we had a specific language, before we have a culture, basically, thousands of years ago, when we were hominids, we used to cover ourselves with mud so we don't smell. So we don't smell for the predators not to follow us, and also for the insects not to bother us. So we had this tradition, or we used to cover ourselves in mud so we can survive and we can walk secure through our ways, our paths. This created the concept that we came from the mud, that we are the people from mud. This creates the idea that humans were created by mud, we come from mud, and we survived and were designed by mud. So, because we were living in between mud, a typical thing that every kid and young person would do is to take the mud and play with it. And by playing, they would create these little figures. They would create these little figures to imitate the people that we were there, the family and so on. So they create these tiny little statues of mud that they saw that with the sun, with the heat, they would start to get dry and hard as a rock. So what we started to do was to get better into do these sculptures until we shaped humans. And these humans mainly were women, fatty women. So they were pregnant, or they represented fertility. They represented abundance. They had a meaning of good things to come. So once we managed to do these clay figures, we started to put names on them, and by putting them a name was like creating a new human, a new part of the family. So that created the idea of an egregor, a being that was protecting the family, that has a soul. It was the Mother Earth. So from these figures, they started to make animals, they started to make different creatures, creating from imagination, and they started to originate the concept of the two first main religions that were the animistic religions and the totemic religions. Those who followed the animals. So these animals in that shape of a clay, they would be the protectors of the family or the group. So sculpture able people to download imagination into matter. They started to create beings that doesn't exist. They started to design creatures that were in there, and even though they could manifest it. So for example, the dragons beings that they didn't exist, but they were able to manifest them by sculptures. So by imagination and this culture, they help the beings that were invisible in the imagination and beyond to be downloaded into the matter. So when they added the eyes to the sculpture, they felt like the soul or the spirit of those beings were incarnated in that figure. So this tradition of these traditions of shaping something in order for the divinity to be downloaded into the matter was spread into many cultures, into many civilizations. Like, for example, here I am in Egypt, and in Egypt you have many of different kinds. So what they did was to write and shape the images of their gods, goddesses, and divinities, and by shaping them in the walls, what they accomplished, or they were willing to, was to call the attention of the gods so they could come see straight into their eyes and to go into the matter. So that's why the writings and the signs were considered holy. So holy scripture. Holy scripture in Greek, you might say hieroglyphos. So hieroglyphics is the origin of the holy scripture. So through time, the work with mud started to be also work with clay, from clay to stones, from stone to granite, and it became harder and also much more perfect. And the idea of doing this sculpture, as you see, was not just to do something beautiful and say, oh, look how beautiful I did this. No, the goal was totally different. The goal was to help the divinity that is invisible to have a place to manifest itself. So the spirits can come to the stone and speak to the humans, and we could speak with them through the stones. So it has a specific goal to manifest the divinity. So as you see, sculpture, it was not just a kind of art as we have it today. Sculpture was something beyond, was a way that enables the divinity to live in between humans and its own creation. It was a way to communicate with the divine. So eventually, there comes a moment in history when humans all start to wonder if the spirit of the divine, they are eternal and they can incarnate in the stones to keep alive forever. So some humans said, I want to do the same. So some priests, some kings and queens, pharaohs, they started to design sculpture for themselves. They started to say, I want to be eternal too. So I want my own statue. So people not only did statues of their gods, the divinities, but they started to make statues for their important people, so they could keep alive forever. And of course, that if you are going to live forever, you want to look as perfect, because you're not going to be ugly forever, for example. So they tried to design themselves as the best they could to be eternally like that. And for example, here in Egypt, you have, if you come to Egypt and you see Egypt, you will see Ramses II. Ramses II, you go, you see every statue, and it's like, wow, he was beautiful, he was strong, he was young, wow. And no, it was not like this. The guy was like 70 years old, and he did all these statues of himself looking like 20, 25 years old, strong man, beautiful, powerful, and so on. But of course, who wants to be like ugly and old forever. So he wanted to be like that, like I want to be eternally like this. Okay, so so that's why you see him like this in the statues. So after this idea of having after this idea of having the images of gods and to be eternal like this, it comes the birthing of civilization, which was the Greek-Roman empires. And the Greek-Roman sculpture was very different, because in Greece, they wanted to do something that was transcendental than the empires before, which was not to honor eternity, but to honor what they were living and how they were in that moment. Nature. They were honoring nature and how it was nature. So that's why all the cultures from Greece and Italy, they started to design the sculptures to show the people and the gods in a very human way, the most natural way possible. So they started to make these sculptures in a way that you can appreciate how beautiful they are. But something that maybe most of you don't know is that in that period of time, they wanted for them to be alive. And that's why they weren't white. They were colorful. So much colorful. So much color. Too many colors. Like this. It was, every statue was like this in colors. So now we see them white because, of course, the pass of the time, clean up for 2,000 or 3,000 years, they went away. So the stone is only there, the white stone. But in the Greek and Roman times, all the sculptures were painted with a lot of color, very shiny. They painted the face, the eyes with the red colors, if they had here, with the hair was painted. They used to dress also, some sculptures. They put a lot of colors, a lot of shiny things in the body. So it would be very grotesque to see that. So if you're able to see, to picture how it was before, it was like too much, like too much color, too weird, and sometimes maybe horrible. But that was the thing of that day. Of course, it would be until the Renaissance, the 15th century, that the people that started to look back in history, they saw the sculptures white, and they thought that was the way in which they were supposed to be. So that's why they started to do it white. And that's why when you go to museums and you see the 15th century, you will see this beautiful sculptures all in white and marble. But in the ancient times, it was not like this. It was all colorful. So throughout all history, as you see, sculpture was a way to allow the spirits, the invisible, to download into the matter, to be living here in this reality. So this is why sculpture, it was a way to understand that everything in the matter, everything that has a shape and name, can be also related to the spiritual world. And that is the metaphysics that relates the sculpture with humanity. That people also believed that we were sculptures, that we were also made like that, and that the spirits that lives within us are living here because we are taking care of our bodies. So if we polish the body, if we take care of the body, if we carve perfectly the body, so like if we are a sculptor, we are taking care of the spirit living here as long as possible to be. So this is the straight relationship in spirituality between sculpture and our reality. So now, is this relationship between body and sculpture, this spirituality between both of them, that makes religion to design the idea that if we are molding things with mud to put a soul on it, so someone in the past had to do exactly the same with us. We came from the mud, so we have been made out of mud. And if we were made out of mud, someone has to put a soul within ourselves, as we do with our sculptures. So we created the idea of the story. We created the idea of the story that someone has used clay, mud, in order to create us. So as you see, it's not from before to the future that we created these stories. It's because it's from in front to the back. We created the story according to what we were living. You get that? Okay. So this takes us to the oldest story of mud that was in the region of Middle East. The region of Middle East. That's Middle East. These are the rivers Tigris and Euphrates. So now, this region here is what we call Babylon, and it's between two rivers, Tigris and Euphrates. In Greek, between two rivers is said Mesopotamia. Meso is in the middle, and potamos is rivers. So in between rivers, Mesopotamia. This here is the desert of Syria. This here is the desert of Sinai. All this here is the desert of Persia, actual Iran. All this region here, Caucasus and the north of Turkey, was ice. Ice age. So this region here belonged to other people, other cultures that were warriors and nomads. So as you see here, what we have in this territory is what we call the garden. Is a territory that is impossible to expand because everything is desert. So the garden. So this territory here was called as the territory of the light. The territory of light was Ur-Uk, and today is called the same but with a mispronunciation, Iraq. And this is what we call the Eden Garden. So in this territory here is where this civilization was born, Babylon. So in this tradition, they said that the sky and the heaven, the sky and the earth created the divinities of nature, that they had to design humans. The god of skies, they call it Anu, and the goddess of the earth was called Ki. The children of Anu and Ki were called the Na. So the children of Anu and Ki were called the Anunnaki. Anunnaki. Okay? The children of heaven and earth. So it's important to know this because everyone here for sure have heard this name Anunnaki. And for sure it's related to aliens and related to people that is wrong, that is bad, and the name is like the devil. But actually, if we go to the etymology of the old language, it's just to say we are sons of the heaven and earth. And what are we? Are we sons of heaven and earth? Children of heaven and earth? So we are Anunnaki too. It's just about language. So then from them we have two kids. Many kids, but mostly two. One is the Lord of the earth, and the other one the Lord of the wind. En is the name for Lord. So the Lord of earth, what's its name? Enki. The Lord of earth. Enki. Enlil. And the Lord of air, of the wind, Enlil. Enki y Enlil. What are these two? Are the representations of agriculture. Because Enki is the lord of the wetlands, and Enlil the lord of the wind, of the storms. So Enki and Enlil. Enki is the lord of these two rivers, the wetlands. That's it. And Enlil, the wind, the storms, is the wind that comes from Anatolia, the mountains that comes down. And they go down. So in between the two rivers and the winds that come down the mountains to the valley, you have agriculture. The perfect place to generate a civilization. And because Enki is the lord of the wetlands, is the creator of humans. So important to understand, these names here are names from this territory. But this story is being said in many other places around the world. In every continent, in Asia, in the Americas, in Africa, in Europe, in Australia, everywhere. They had the same things. Wetland, wind, sky, earth. Concepts. Adama. How do you say red land in these languages? Adama. How do you say life in this language. Iowa. How do you say life? Iowa. Adam, Iowa. From the red land comes the life. As you see, they are all concepts, but in order for the divinity of that concept to incarnate and to be able to talk to, we personificate, we put the body of a person to that concept. Okay? And that's how it becomes a god. So what am I saying here? That there were not aliens in history that were in touch with humans? No, I'm not saying that. Yes, of course there were aliens, of course, but they weren't those gods. This is another story. So I say this because when we, as I said, we stopped believing in the Bible, and suddenly we are believing in other Bibles from other cultures, even older. So we are having this conflict today that we stop believing in the stories of the Bible, and we can tell now that the history of these religions comes from the solstices and equinoxes and so on. But I don't know why we keep believing the stories of, literally, we keep believing the stories that are older. So we have to rethink about that. The answers are not so farther from us. So when someone from the outside came to this earth to do stuff, they were not in touch with humans as we believe in the histories, in the stories. But we started to mix both stories as if the two characters are the same one. And we started to believe that they are the same. Okay? So, as I explained here, sometimes we just stay with one thing, saying that this is truth or this is not. And it's not like that. Not always is like this or like that. We have a bit of everything. But we have to remember that we are humans. We were created in this planet. We come from this planet. We are animals from this world. And there came other beings from other planets that transform DNA in some species like ours in this world, of course. But the stories, and I mean in the stories, we have to check the stories and to see the stories, that sometimes we miss parts of it because we just take the story that we have heard, but behind there is geography, context, and many things that can help us to understand that we are mixing stories and things. I hope that we can get this concept of culture today. that in the same way as we design things, figures, to put a spirit on it, we created the idea that someone has to build ourselves through the same materials to put a soul, a spirit within us. Okay, so that's what I want for us to get here as important in this culture. So here the clue of history is, were there aliens that came to Earth and modify us? Yes. They did experiment with us? Yes. Were they the gods and goddesses that stories tell about? No. The stories, the mythology, is other thing that describes our environment, and the stories of aliens were put inside of those other stories. It's like if it was eaten by our own stories. Okay? Okay. And something to clarify here, because I see that many times. Humans don't come from monkeys. Monkeys, hominids. Monkeys, hominids, a different species. Okay? Darwin never said that we came from the monkey. Okay? So, just to clarify this, because sometimes we take data and information from some places and we start to not to look for by ourselves. And Darwin never said that we come from the monkey. We come from the hominids. And Darwin didn't have the whole picture, the whole thing. And that doesn't mean that it's wrong. It doesn't mean that is wrong. Darwin put another link into the understanding of evolution. So now we get to understand evolution because of what he did. But this doesn't mean that he was wrong. Okay? And he never said we come from the monkey. So important to understand this, okay? Because we sometimes keep something that someone said and we take it as true, and we have to look for it. So the same thing happened with the stories of creation. So another thing that sometimes I see a lot too, that humanity was, that they lied to us, that people lied to us, to humanity. And nobody lied to humanity. What happened in history is that a lot of people were saying something and people listened something different, and others believed in something different, and they had experience and some others didn't have experience. So it's important to understand that throughout the history, some people believed those stories. So we were not fooled by anyone. We just kept going with information that was mistaken because we didn't get it. So important to understand that we are all the time molding the information, that the conflict here is not that someone lied to us, it's that we are not looking for a new answer. Imagine that you listen all of what I say and you just take it as the whole truth and you don't keep looking for it. eventually this will become a lie. Eventually, if you don't look for it, and maybe someday you find a new answer, and what? That means that I was wrong? It doesn't mean that I was wrong. It means that I give you something for you to keep looking for it. There's no a complete truth. Okay, so important to understand this, because nobody lied to us. It's just that we stopped looking for it. So I invite you to remember that with all of this, what we have to do is to sculpt ourselves, to take some things that we don't need, to add some new things, to mold ourselves in this sculpture in body, soul, and spirit. And as Michelangelo said, to discover the angel that is inside the stone, the essence that is within this structure. The vibration for today is Ri. The statement for today is, I am guardian of the web. The code for today, of course, had to be alien. Everything that is found outside or is unknown for our world is considered alien. This means that doesn't belong to the terrestrial kingdom, and for that they constitute the alien kingdom. Here it can be considered all those beings that overcome humans, that have accomplished living in the development of the fourth dimension, that allows to abandon the biological cells of their worlds to go through time in those biological and planetary evolutions. Let's go to the alignment. Sit comfortable, close your eyes, and concentrate in your breathing. I become aware of the space that surrounds me, the body I inhabit, and my own breathings. I start to use my imagination to make every object in this room disappear. Everything disappears, vanish, even the roof, the walls, and the floor. All of it becoming void. And myself in the center. In this void, I pay attention to one specific spot, and I bring all my energy and intention to that spot. I focus all my being in this dot. I look straight to this spot. It becomes a spark, and this spark starts to expand into many others that create a fire that grows bigger and bigger, and lighting the whole space till I can feel the heat in my skin. I recognize that this fire is the essence of my soul, and from this fire I can build my home, the home of my dreams. I take this fire with my hands and moving them softly and slowly towards every direction as if I am dancing. I bring the flames of this fire in every direction, creating through it the walls, the rooms, and the gardens of this dream house, of my home. I recognize that every room has a chakra, is an organ, that the walls are my bones, the kitchen is my heart, and the gardens are my projects. I take a moment now to design with my hands a sculpture that incarnates the spirit that I want to manifest inside this house. I start to feel the mud, the clay in between my hands. And I start to mold it. Setting the intention to manifest the spirit of this house that I want to manifest in this place. And once I see this in front of me, I recognize that it incarnates all the web, the net of all the information, all the attributes that made my being who I am. And so, with my singing, I send the intention to set life to it, to manifest and awake its spirit. I am the guardian of this web. I am the guardian of this web. I am the guardian of this web. I have this spirit in me. I have. I have. I have. Take a deep breath, and each one at its own time, come back here and now. Those who had been following the task for this month, take all this energy, put it into the water, and put it in the seeds that we have sowed. Thank you everybody for being here another day, and as always, see you tomorrow at the same time.